There's just so much that I want to dive into with you. I definitely would love to start with just a little bit of your story because your life's been out of this world since the very beginning.
Starting to make more sense.
Yes,
That's what
yes.
like finally. Well, a lot of people talk about past lives, and for me, my most recent past life doesn't feel like what people would typically talk about when they think like, oh, it was 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. I instead, my most recent memories come from a past life in a possible future that's rather dystopian. So I'm just starting there because that really a lot of things colored who I became and who I am today, and that was a big part of shaping me. Was the past life 540 years before I was actually born, in a dystopian possible future where central artificial intelligence was calling the shots and making sure that people did not do anything that it considered dangerous. So it would do electromagnetic pulse kind of wipeouts on people's minds. So they couldn't quite remember what they were doing that the central AI considered potentially dangerous.
Mm.
And I felt like I was there as an observer. And my observation is a big thumbs down with this reality, if that's what I was there for. But then I came into this life with some PTSD and some superpowers. It's a mixed bag. It's like I remember how to create reality based on being a quantum observer, which now I can write about it, I can talk about it. But like I said, I feel like my life is starting to make sense finally. It's
Yeah,
starting like getting some traction after so much of a rather weird feeling of just being on the wrong planet. Because
yeah,
I did have that born aware feeling, which there's a book about it. If you wonder what's that,
yeah,
Diane Brandon wrote an excellent book, and every chapter describes different experiences. My chapter was "Whoops, Wrong Planet" because that's how I felt. I felt like there'd been some sort of terrible mix-up. It's like
mm.
the elevator doors open and you look out like, nope, wrong floor, wrong
Where am I
planet.
and how did I get here?
Yeah, I think it was just a matter. I wanted to hang out more in the blissful in between lives zone where it's just love and you can, everybody that you're connected to, they know who they are, and it just feels so good. But so to then be part of this life and this planet was a shock to my system. I
Mm,
really didn't, I felt like I needed more rest and recovery time, partly because I did remember a little, perhaps
mm.
what I used to think was too much of that past life. Now it feels just right. Now what I remember, it looks real. For the first time, it's starting to look like, oh, this could happen.
Yeah,
Before this, it just sounded, I didn't even talk about it. There was no point
yeah.
bringing it up, but it shaped everything I'm doing, everything, because it meant that as I was growing up, I wanted to know the true nature of reality. I was
Mm,
interested in consciousness. So I studied physics at UC Berkeley because that was the closest thing that would kind of get partway there. There wasn't really a consciousness program in the 1980s when I attended, first, my undergraduate degree program and then my graduate program, which was information technology. I got an MBA degree and worked in banking, actually. So it's been a strange journey. More recently, I had a Kundalini awakening that brought me back on track because I think I was getting a little detoured. I was not, I
mm.
don't think I was too much of a yuppie, but kind of. I was working at a bank, Citibank, and you know, anyway,
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
like that's not exactly what I'm here on the planet to be doing.
No.
Making money is fine. That's part of what we're doing, but
Yeah.
in addition to that, it's more important to know who we really are, what reality really is. And so that's now what I dedicate my work to. I've written some books, not that many. I tend to take years to write them and then put everything I've got into the current one.
I heard you mention The Untethered Soul. That book, it's beautifully written. I love Michael Singer. As I was reading it, you were on some podcast, and you were talking about your books. So I ended up ordering as I'm still reading The Untethered Soul. So I read that, and then I read your books, and I'm not kidding. Everything I knew to be true was flipped on its head, and I have never seen the world the same since. I mean, truly, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Your writing is beautiful. For everyone listening, I'm going to have absolutely everything in the description box.
Oh, it means so much to me. Oh, you've touched my heart. That's what I'm really all about is just bringing that soul connection
Yeah.
down back down to earth. I love that. I really miss that between lives bliss, and you're sharing it with me right now. So I feel like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
this is what it's worth living for. So with these books and with my website, I've also got the website that I've started sharing things. I needed a push. Sometimes my angelic guides give me a little nudge or much bigger nudge because I was getting kind of what do you call it? Procrastinating, shall we say,
Yeah.
about starting the website and starting all the writing and everything. I thought, yeah, I'll get to it sometime. And I thought just letting my guides and my angels know, like, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll be there some point at some point. I thought that I found the perfect stalling maneuver. Well, what happens? I got these phone calls to my unlisted phone number from ladies asking if I could talk to their angels because that was the thing I was stalling on at that time. Like, I don't want to be a mentor and a life coach and do all that's kind of weird. I'm more familiar with science. That's something to be proud of. My parents understand it. And this other thing, oh, that's weird. But but no, clearly that's important for me to be in service in that way, to be a mentor, to be a coach, and also to write the books, all
Mm.
of it, the best I can. So what happened is that these three women called me one after another. And when the third, because I do ask for signs, I know I can be stubborn. I know I can be dense, so I do ask, give me a sign in three. So if I'm missing a point, bring it in clearly. Don't hit me over
Yes.
the head with a piano. Don't drop something big on me. Just make it so I don't miss the point. And boy,
Yes. Yes.
I couldn't miss the point because the last person I said, well, how did you get this phone number? Because it was really was unlisted. And she said, I said, was it from my website? Because I'm thinking it shouldn't be on the website, but maybe it was. And she said, you have a website? And then I'm like, yeah, they all told me that their angels told them to call me. So that's
Wow.
the way things really work. And I
Mm.
get maybe I'm just fortunate to see that a lot.
Yes.
So I get a lot of those kind of reminders because it's important for all of us to step up and do what we're called to do, which can be
Mm.
scary at whatever
Mm.
level we're operating. I'm sure it was scary for you
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
have your mind blown by
Yeah.
Michael Singer.
Yeah. It can be scary. You're absolutely right.
It's kind of how you know when you're on track, though. It's that
Yes.
little, it's kind of like stage fright. Like if you've ever been in a play or a performance and almost your time to go up on stage and you're getting the butterflies, and then suddenly it feels worse than butterflies. It's
Yeah.
like, oh no, like my throat's drying up. And you
Yeah.
just have to pull it together. But
Yeah.
that's how you know like you're on track. It's that rush of energy. It's that feeling like I'm about to go on. The spotlight's almost on me. And then the best advice there is just relax, be
Yes.
yourself, know that you've got this. You've done everything that it took to be there. You're going to
Mm.
be just fine. There's so much support and love for you.
Yeah.
Everybody would really most love you to succeed, even if you don't think so. That's really the
Right.
truth. How
Yes.
good can it get?
Yes.
Everybody's pulling for you. Everybody needs you
Yes.
to be your best because only then, to me, does this feel like heaven on earth.
Mm.
And that's so important that we need to be showing up at what we're called to be here to do. What's in our hearts, what really resonates and matters, what feels most genuine.
If you could just kind of explain what the Mandela effect is, how multiple timelines work, all that. This is something that is so just it's not only fascinating, but I've had personal experiences with this and yeah, tell us everything you know, Cynthia.
Gosh, we'll be here for hours, days. It's basically something that's coming into public awareness recently in the last few years. People are becoming more aware of it. The term itself was coined in the early 2000s, although as a topic, it's really what I'm living for and what I'm here to be helping everyone with. And it's what I've been calling reality shifts originally. Now I think I would prefer to call it something like collective alternate memories. The term itself, Mandela effect, some people think, is that mandala, like the meditation circle? No, it's not that. It's like Nelson Mandela, because just like I noticed the actor Larry Hagman was alive again. He died in the 1980s and he was alive again. And so many others have been like that. Jane Goodall, many others. Um, it came to the attention of people, including Art Bell. He's the coast to coast radio. Wow, extraordinaire. He was just such an amazing person. I want to give a shout out and credit to him because I think he was the first person to really bring
Mm.
up the topic of Nelson Mandela on his live broadcast. And he started getting faxes and calls and all sorts of things about people saying, wait a minute, Nelson Mandela's alive? I thought he died in jail. Does anyone else remember that? So it came up as a big thing on his radio show. And then it percolated for a while. And then Fiona Broom was at a Dragon Con event, and she and a bunch of other people were just talking about that same topic. Like, what about Nelson Mandela? Do you remember that he was dead and now he's alive? And so that's where the term Mandela effect came into being, like it or hate it or whatever, there it is. So it's a descriptor, but I think the more accurate, more descriptive descriptor would be collective alternate memories. Because if you look up the definition right now for Mandela effect, chances are you're going to see something jumping to a conclusion about what's causing it. And I would say it's an incorrect conclusion.
Mm.
It's a very brass, bold, and I think wrong-headed conclusion. They will call it false collective memories. And I'd say, well, isn't that ascribing cause to it? A false memory would be saying and claiming that it's that one of the two memories that we have, like Berenstain Bears, one of them is wrong, and then whatever it currently is right. What if the phenomenon is showing us that reality is miraculous and that
Yeah.
it's like a dream and
Yes.
it's not at all fixed? It's more Maya, more illusion, which is what the great philosophers and the perennial traditions have told us, and most of the great scriptures and spiritual texts as well. So if we look at it with those eyes, then it would be collective alternate memories. So the other examples would be from movies. If you build it, they will come, is what I remember from Field of Dreams.
Absolutely.
Now it has both that line and also occasionally, if you build it, he will come. There was no
Abs-
he will come. There was
No,
none of that. None of
no, no,
that. And
no.
yes, so many other things have changed, including geography. I remember the Straits of Gibraltar, and I remember Gibraltar being surrounded by water. Now it's not, and now it's
Mm.
kind of a protuberance off of the coast, and the straits doesn't make sense anymore. There are lots of geographic changes that have happened and continue to happen. The physiological changes are happening. Our heart used to be so far to the left that if you're fencing, the target for the heart would be painted on the left like a little heart. Now it doesn't make any sense because the heart has moved so much to the center that you wouldn't paint it that way on a fencing shirt. So, very interesting changes. The heart's the one that a lot of people remember because they would have their blood pressure taken selectively on just, it's different on the left and the right side, is the way it used to be, because the heart was so noticeably situated closer to the left arm. So you could get a different kind of a reading if you did your blood pressure on the left. Now the heart has moved to the center. So we're seeing that you can get your blood pressure accurately taken on either arm. And there's no preference mentioned by doctors or caregivers like some of us remember there used to be. So these are memories. Now,
Yes.
if people are checking, there are people nowadays, they're going to fact check things. They're going to go to their Google and so forth and look things up, and that's fine. Keep in mind, when you're fact checking Mandela effects, you're going to get all the evidence that's that's basically correct and complementary to whatever timeline you may be existing in. The
Yes.
only proof that you're going to have of these other timelines or these other realities is your own and my own memories. And so that's what makes it so interesting.
Yes.
Um, it's going to be hard to actually prove anything. Having said that, of course, there are instances of what some people call reality residue. However, if I look up all the facts that, it doesn't matter which reference books I pull out, everything will be consistent with the timeline we're currently in, with the exception of some of us who remember things differently. And what we're saying is we're not losing our minds. We are lawyers, we're attorneys. I'm not, but I just came from a conference and we had an attorney there. We had a head of a medical department there. This is not a topic that's just from the, it's not the last bastion of the confused and the false memory fools. No, these are people like yourself, like me. These are world leaders. These are people who have held parliamentary positions in England,
Mm.
generals working in the Pentagon. I've received reports from them. Over the last 25 years, I've been documenting firsthand reports. So in the past, people wanted to maintain anonymous privacy. And because it was considered a little bit off to be saying, look, I'm in the Pentagon and I just had a basic massive reality shift. I was ducking and dodging someone. I saw them coming toward me in a hall and I thought, I don't want to talk to them. So this gentleman jumped into a stairwell. He thought he was going down one floor. I'm laughing. Twilight Zone, cue the Twilight Zone music. The next thing he knows, he comes out like supposed to be one floor different, but it's like he's jumped in the building. He's sort of been teleported, and everything looks totally different, and it's like a totally different part of the building, and he doesn't know
Wow.
how that happened. But that's par for the course. These things are happening. I'm saying they're happening to all of us, not
Yeah,
just easily
absolutely.
confused people.
Yeah,
So,
no, no. I mean, Cynthia, I'm not kidding. I remember when Nelson Mandela was released and they were talking about it on like on the news and I mean, I was talking out loud to my TV. Like he appeared and I said to the TV, "Isn't he dead?" And then they're continuing on and I'm like like I've lost my mind. I'm like, I learned in school that he died. I remember like he was I had him and Martin Luther King like in that same like memory box. Like it was what I remember when we learned about him, it was just like learning about Martin Luther King. Like I felt sadness and anger and we like I remember it so well. And when I saw the news, I was like, what's happening right now? And I mean, everything from like the Costco, you talked about this on Next Level Soul. Costco, I went into South Lake, Texas I wasn't going to the Costco. I was driving past it to go to another store and it read Costco like normal. The tea was there. I went back, a couple of weeks later, a month later, the tea's gone. I went back. The tea's been now reappeared and has been there ever since. And
right.
I honestly, I mean, it was everything from like believing myself at first to talking myself out of what I was seeing. I mean, I've had experiences in my personal life, things that I remember differently from other people that I'm very close to, like completely differently. Like memories that we shared apparently they don't remember them happening. Like it's like music we listen to. Like, I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yes.
Fascinating. It's crazy when you're going through it and don't know what's going on, or even when you research what's going on. It's hard to, I mean, I've experienced it myself. I've learned, the truth, the science, the realness of it, and I still have a hard time fully really like grasping, understanding, and wrapping my mind around it. It's crazy and beautiful and I love the time that we are living in.
To me, this is the most important topic that humans could possibly be
Yes,
talking about.
couldn't agree
This
more. It
important
only
because,
changes everything, Cynthia.
yeah, yeah,
Everything.
exactly. It changes science, it changes history, it changes all of the so-called big issues facing us right now.
Yes.
It
Yes.
doesn't matter what the thing is. There's a Because basically what the Mandela effect is showing us is everything can change, and it can change so thoroughly that
Yes.
it looks like it's always been that way. Like
Yeah.
we've just collectively made a leap to a reality where now the heart is in the
Yes.
center of the chest. Now the kidneys are moved upward under the relative
Yes.
safety of the rib cage. It means anything can and will change. And that is I find it hopeful because from the field of physics, I take to heart the idea that when you ask nature a question,
Mm.
nature always answers. Now, I'm citing the work of a physicist, John Archibald Wheeler, who was a contemporary of Albert Einstein. And people don't necessarily know John Archibald Wheeler. He's not the household name like Einstein with E equals MC squared, but he should be. Wheeler
Mm.
should be famous because he gave us the name for black holes. And he
Mm.
gave us the concept of the participatory universe, which is what I'm talking about right now, which is when you ask nature a question, nature answers. And now I'm taking it farther than Wheeler probably ever meant it to go. He didn't like metaphysics. I'm just saying that, right? I know that. So people can tell me, like, Cynthia, he didn't like this. Okay, I know. And I know a lot of physicists. I studied physics at UC Berkeley,
Mhm.
and I've gone to conferences where we've hosted the hippies who saved physics, including Fred Allen Wolf, and John Sarfati was there, and Henry Stapp was there, and George Weissman, who I've co-authored a paper with, was there. So these are great physicists, but having said that, they can have a little bit of a blinder effect
Mhm.
where they can be so focused, and there's nothing wrong with that. They need to be
Yes.
focused on what they're studying. In the process of focusing and getting that selective attentional span, it's going to be harder to open and welcome in the vastness of reality itself.
Yes.
Which, I mean, some would say, like, well, that should have been Wheeler's point all along, maybe, but I think it's hard for him to see it. So when we look at that, ask nature a question, nature answers. What kind of questions do we want to be asking? Well, that to me is obvious. We will only want to ask the questions that we most wish, love, and long and need to know the
Mm.
answers to. Do
Mm.
not ask questions you don't wish to and don't
Yes.
need and don't love to know the answers
Agree.
to. So
Agree.
then that means you can always add my favorite spice question, how good can it get, to everything you're
Mm.
doing? Everything.
Yes. Yes.
When it's messed up, ask how good can it get? Even though, like, am I being sarcastic? This is a disaster. Yeah, ask how good can it get? Really long and ache to know that. And it's kind of like the escape, like in the movie The Matrix. It's like
Yeah.
we need an exit. So they get that phone call in the phone booth. This is the exit. How
Yes.
good can it get is the exit. And it's
Yes.
going to pull you right out of whatever, I'm not going to swear, but whatever disastrous reality that
Yes.
might seem to be. And
Yeah.
it totally, totally works. And the more energy you bring to it, the more emotion, the more you need it.
Mm.
And also I'd recommend practice it,
Mm.
practice, getting parking spots and that kind of stuff. So you feel like, okay, I think I'm manifesting pretty well. Then you're ready. Then just start
Yeah.
bringing it in. But you can bring that in every day.
I just want to hear your thoughts on just what's happening around the world. This is something else I've heard you speak so well about. And you've brought up everything from energy lines, dragon lines, the
Right.
architect, you've talked about solar energy, the Hopi prophecy, and you sum all these things up in just such a beautiful way. I would love if you could just share all of that with the audience.
I've been long interested in the Hopi as well. I wrote an article for Parabola magazine about 20 years ago, Comes True, Being Hoped For. It was in the Threshold issue. And it was all about basically the Hopi and physics, two of my favorite
I love
passions.
it.
And it was talking about just to me, it's not mythology. I think we
Mm,
denigrate ourselves and we denigrate indigenous wisdom when we call things mythology as if it's fake. I think obviously there's reality being shared by some of these ancient stories. And so in that article I wrote, Comes True, Being Hoped For, I was introducing the words Tunatia and Tunatiava, which are
mm,
very aligned with this concept of you ask nature a question and you get an answer. Tunatia and Tunatiava, they mean comes true, being hoped for. That there's this active involvement and participation that we wise humans have, we Homo sapiens. So what we're intended to do is to be participating with reality. And then if you look at the mythology of the Hopi, you'll see that they talk about the world having ended three times already, that it's ended. And we see proof of that as well. We see there was a great flood on the planet. We've got some fabulous ancient archaeology programs now investigating that and giving us more and more evidence that this actually happened. And it's not just not just Moses, excuse me, Noah and the flood,
yeah.
in the Bible. Thinking water, like, oh yes, Moses. I think all the miracles are real, by the way. When I hear these stories about Moses parting the Red Sea, I'm like, that happened. I know it happened.
Yeah.
Okay, because of all these reality shifts and
I
quantum
would,
jumps.
yes, exactly, exactly,
Big
exactly.
believer in miracles now. And so when I look at the indigenous, going back to the Hopi, and they're talking about we're in the fourth world. And Frank Waters was doing some research and getting requesting to hear some of the stories that the Hopi would tell, because a lot of this is
Mm,
sacred to them and they don't
yeah.
openly share the information.
Mm,
Having said that, obviously, when it gets to a certain point in time, then they do share more, obviously, because we're moving, as they would predict from, or they did predict, from the fourth to the fifth world. So we're getting the indicators. like extinct animals are coming back, and just a lot of the markers are showing up right now.
Yeah.
So it's a threshold from one world to the next. So the threshold of one world to the next is considered very sacred to the Hopi. To them, we can't speak for them, but we can look at their prophecy rock, and it's basically written in stone, showing that there would be some great shakings of the planet, which has been interpreted to be World Wars One and Two. And then there would be kind of a bifurcation where one timeline, if you want to call it that, moves kind of upward, but in a sort of a weird way. It doesn't stay connected to the earth, and the people on it, their heads look disconnected from their bodies. To me, the whole thing looks like it's going into cloud. I think that's amazing because at this time we're talking about transhumanism, which to me is a mistake. I mean, okay, if you're getting assistance from mechanical medical intervention that's necessary for your health and
Right.
well-being, that's fine. My concern has more to do with transhumanism invading the body and then giving, for example, central AI the ability, for example, to shut off a human
Mm,
uh, because I feel like I've already been through that. I feel like let's not do that again. To me, it's too fresh in my memory. And
mm,
so I'm voting a big NO on that. And when I look at the prophecy rock, because of my background, that's what I'm seeing. Now, other people are going to interpret it differently. I'm just saying it looks like I think I know what I'm seeing here. And then
yeah.
the line that goes around the rock and continues with great prosperity to
Mm,
the fifth world would be those are the elderly and the young people and the infirm, all the people who have good hearts. They keep
mm,
the Kopavi, the crown chakra, open to receive inspiration and intuition. They keep their hearts open to each other. They keep their relationships open to the land, to the plants, to the animals. They continue on around to the fifth world. And so it's just a nice steady progression. I'm actually seeing this right now. I'm seeing this right now in a splitting of the worlds,
mm,
much as apparently the Bible and Dolores Cannon and a bunch of
mhm,
others have predicted. And
mhm.
then if you look, you mentioned the dragon lines. What's going on with that? That would be the work. I'd like to cite the reference, the work of Hamish Miller, who was a wonderful author of books like The Sun and the Serpent. And I used to buy his books and he'd autograph them and they'd send him a $20 bill. It would take a few weeks
Awesome.
for it to get to England. He'd receive it, autograph the book, mail it back. So
Oh,
this is, I'm dating myself. This was the 1980s.
that's awesome.
19. So then along comes Rory Duff, who feels about Hamish Miller the way I do, I think. And I'm citing now Rory Duff because he's alive. Hamish Miller has passed on. Rory Duff is with us, and
Yeah.
he's showing us that these ley lines, the energy lines that crisscross the planet, they're getting bigger, they're getting bigger, they're getting bigger. And what he calls the dragon lines are opening up, which are energy lines. And those of us who are energy sensitive are noticing there's so much energy flooding through. So many people are seeing these repeating numbers 111, 222. We're getting signs and synchronicities. It's as if we're all going through a Kundalini awakening together, which is a huge opening of the chakra system in the human body, which means whatever we think, so it is.
Mm,
So this to me is like, okay, the fifth world is arriving. We're all getting an opportunity to experience it. It does seem also that some people are not quite ready for it. We know
mm.
people who this is not their cup of tea. They don't like these topics. They feel like, okay, that's weird. That's good for you guys. So
Right.
they're not quite doing what we're doing, and
Yeah.
that is fine. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. And I think when you look at the world splitting, I think that's what's happening. I don't think we need to panic about like what's going on and is
Yeah.
one world doomed. I don't see it that way. I
Yeah.
just see that if you need more learning, you'll get more learning. And if you feel like I know to keep asking how good can it get, not just for myself, but for everyone, well, that's good news because then you're on this kind of miracle minded world. This is the new world with the new plants and fruits and vegetables coming in and just magic and miracles, basically. It's it's difficult too. You're still in physical form.
Yes.
We're
Yeah.
still going to be in our 3D bodies, which always feels like a little bit of a struggle.
Hmm.
So I'm just being honest about it. Like I thought it was the wrong planet. Like, like people are not lined up. That you may still see that. So there's going to be I think it's going to be a while it's splitting apart. And I think we're seeing that right now.
Yeah.
And it's going to be fine. It's going to
Yeah.
be it's going to be so exciting for those of us who are capable of experiencing the synchronicities, the signs. If you're seeing the 111s, the 222s, the 333s, then you're on that magic and miracles um, journey, and you're on the new world already. It's here. So it's kind of like we don't even call it that yet because it seems so normal. And it still seems like you look at the news and you'll see scary stuff. Remember, always ask how good can it get, no matter what it looks like, no matter what disaster seems to be
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Be a radical optimist,
Yeah.
and that way you're on the right new earth for sure.
I love it. I love it. So, for those who are maybe just first listening to these kind of topics, can you explain how this is even possible in terms of like multiple timelines, multiple realities all happening at once, all of that.
Yeah, for a total newbie, for a child, I just tell them imagination is real.
Mm,
I'd say when you think and you like if I'm imagining that like I'm in bed on a cold morning and I just imagine that I'm getting out of bed because I don't want to get out of bed yet, but I'm imagining, okay, I'm gonna get up, I'll take a shower, I'll brush my teeth, I'll get dressed, I'll get ready for the day. So I'm imagining these things. In another reality, I'm actually doing that. That's actually real. What I'm imagining is real. And I've had proof of that personally, where I've basically bilocated when I was daydreaming. And I've had physical effects, like opening a window that my daughters couldn't open, waking them up when I didn't go in their room, turning their light on when they couldn't reach it, all that stuff. So many things. So I've seen evidence that it was me bilocating, daydreaming. I was in two places at once and I was witness there, and it's happened more than once. So I
wow.
know that may seem out there, but that's the evidence and the proof I'm seeing that this is real. I love physics. So if in quantum physics, we know that particles are not simply particles, they're not just matter. They could also instead be pure energy. They could be a particle that you can, with mass and measurement, that you can measure, or spread out over all reality as a wave function, not really decided at all where they are just yet. And it's both at the same time. This is the essence of the Schrodinger's cat experiment, where there's a cat inside of a box. We don't know if it's alive or dead. It's considered both alive and dead. This is physics for you. And then we get into what the interpretations are of what's going on. That has yet to be determined. However, some of the top runners include the many worlds interpretation of quantum physics, which says that there are many possible realities, many possible worlds, and they're all equally possibly true. And another interpretation is holographic, that everything's just sort of enfolded. So there's this amazing connectedness that we're all as one this way, which is beautiful.
It is.
And they're meant, yeah, there's also the transactional interpretation. The future can reach back and have a handshake with the past. And that is guiding us forward. I say yes to all of these. To me, why would quantum physics ever choose which interpretation it likes best when there's so many good ones? If I'm thinking like a quantum theory itself, it's like,
Yes.
yes, and so that's very much like improv. It's yes, and yes, and. And it's a totally different logic than we've been taught in our typical schools with Boolean logic, true or false. Now
Mm,
we're in the realm of quantum logic, and it's
absolutely.
yes and, it's true and false, not true, not false.
Yes.
It's like this big, magical, natural world. It's amazing. We tend to forget that our life is really about relationships. It's right there on the prophecy rock, the Hopi. It's
Yes.
right there. To me,
Yes.
that's what it's all about. It's about relationships. If you wonder what happened with the people that went on that timeline that fizzled out? They lost their heads, but it's worse than that. They lost their connection to their heart. It's like they were just doing things based on what they were thinking, and
Mm,
they lost all of the connection of love to the animals, the plants.
mm,
When I look back at my life, that's what it's going to be. I already know it's going to be the relationships. It's going to be those connections that I didn't even know how important they were.
yes.
And if I have regrets, it'll be about the relationships. I'll feel like,
Mm,
man, why couldn't I have been more present, more connected
mm,
to all of my relations? And I love the way the indigenous look at the seven generations, because that is so beautiful. Then
yes.
you're in relationship not just to the what could be a selfish present moment, but the selfishness is expanded, it's opened up, just like our dimensional reality. What if we open our heart to realize it's the seven generations before us, the ones who are
Mm,
looking after us?
mm,
That's the reason that everything is good as it is right now. And what about the future? That'll depend on us right now. So the challenge is always, have I overcome the tendencies and there's always going to be some temptation to go into fear or grief or anger. And did I transcend that? Did I stay in relationship instead? Gosh, I hope so. So
mm.
to me, that's the greatest thing of all, just to that I'm living for love. That was a question that came to my mind, and I was walking through the church in Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, and I was just it was at a difficult time in my life, right before I decided to do what I'm doing now. It was a decision point. I could have gone back into project management. I was going through a divorce. The whole thing was a traumatic time in my life, and I had two young children depending on me. So what am I going to do? So I decided I'm going to walk the Grace Cathedral labyrinth, which it had a it had the same exact kind of labyrinth on the floor as what was from France. So they did a copy of the Chartres Cathedral labyrinth. And the idea, it's not a maze. You walk in one way, get to the center with your question, meditate in the center, receive your answer, and then come back out. And so that was this
Wow.
moment was so powerful for me. So I'm just aching with this question,
Mm,
like, what am I going to do? How do I guide my life going forward? What's
mm,
going on here? And I got to the center and I think, okay, well, now there was no one else there. It's a little circular space that I have time to and space to meditate in. But as I get there, for some reason, I hadn't noticed the clock was going to, I didn't know the clock would just start chiming, but it did. So I'm inside a cathedral and it starts going bong. I think it was
wow.
12. So it's bonging 12 times. And I realized
Wow.
I'm asking this question and I get the answer, but the answer I get is also a question. The
Mm,
question is, Cynthia, what are you living for? And
mm.
then the bonging begins, and I'm thinking, I have to answer this. What am I living for? That's not fair. I came in with a question and I got a question back. The
Right.
conversation was going to be love. It's going to be love. That was really the beginning of this whole how good can it get? And I co-authored a song with Lisa Vivian from Australia
Wow.
called How Good Can It Get? And you can find it, Lisa Vivian featuring Caleb Jose. Song is How Good Can It Get? It's on YouTube, and it's basically that. So it's that feeling of just knowing that we're aching with something. We humans, we're here for some reason. Each of us has a unique question, a unique purpose. There's that longing, and there's something about that feeling that's the truth of who we really are. It's eternal. It's like we take that into the next realm.
Yes.
It's forever. The
Yes.
relationships we form are forever. And I love now that I got a question back. What are you living for? I love that, and I love how good can it get. So those are that's just that ache, that longing, that
Yeah.
feeling. It's so much more than mere words or ideas. That's to me the big takeaway there.
I love it. Is there anything regarding my matter influence and then like just us kind of being the change that we want to see that you want to touch on? I either want to talk about
Gosh,
that
yeah.
or the Nobel Prize from 2022, but I think I would rather talk about mind matter.
Oh no, I love that. I got
Perfect.
involved in an experiment this year with Institute of Noetic Science and Dean Radin. It was all about mind matter interaction. It was called Sigil, Sigil. So if people don't know Institute of Noetic Sciences, got to check it out. They're constantly running experiments. I think they have several right now, and they're asking for participation and volunteers. So I volunteered for this experiment. Um, and it was all about mind matter interaction. It was about magic, sigil. The idea was, can people influence an actual device? So each of us received a device about yay big. It was about, I don't want to dig it out of its box, but I've got it right here. I talked about it at the conference too, and shared some of the results from the experiment, the sigil experiment. My box was wrapped in, looked like copper tape, which I recognized as a kind of Faraday cage. And I thought that was cool because I'm familiar with Dean Radin's work at IONS. I've been to his shielded room where many of the experiments are conducted. It just means that you can't have electromagnetic influence. It does not mean that you're stopping consciousness. Of course you're not. So
Right.
can you still get, you can still get all kinds of cool effects in that room, which he has successfully demonstrated through a lot of his experimental work. Anyway, I got to be on the inside of this experiment because I was one of the 50 people selected to be participants in basically a 10 run approach to see if we could influence something similar to the double slit experiment. This was actually an interferometer. An interferometer is a device where one ray of light is interfering with another. And so it's kind of usually the old ones, like when I studied physics, they'd work with mirrors. Now, this can be done electronically through the circuitry inside this interferometer. It's an extremely sensitive device. When I was running this experiment, I'd let the device sit still in the room for about half an hour so that it can, because it'll be sensitive to a truck driving by the in front of the house. It'll be sensitive if someone shuts the door, if anybody walks into the room, if the temperature
Wow.
drops or raises, if I tap the box, anything at all, and it'll know like something has happened. So anyway, that's how sensitive this device is.
Wow.
Um, to do the influence, there was a little light on the box that would go from green to white if you're having good effect. It would start at a different color. I think it was red or something. So I try to get it to green, then try to get it to white. At the same time, it was hooked up to software on the computer that would make this beautiful high-pitched sound that was going up in frequency. And then I could also see some numbers sometimes. So I'd see numbers, hear the sound, see the light, and that's my feedback. What was I doing to influence it? Good question. I was doing the kind of magical influence work I would do if I'm trying to influence anything. In other words, I'd feel basically Kundalini energy inside of myself, like a rush of energy. I need that. And then just a certainty that I'm expecting the result that I'm going for. So it's like I can imagine it's already there. So I'm tuning in that adjacent reality, like we're going there. And when I'm doing this, I felt like I was singing basically to angels. I felt like I was singing, like you saw me humming on that video. I was actually singing to raise the frequency because then it keeps my kundalini going. It matches that, and the effects were phenomenal. And I'm starting to see some of the final reports now. Dean is publishing his final reports. You can look it up. The sigil, I forget what the working title now is, but it'll be Dean Radin, spelled Radin, and the experiment is the sigil, SIGIL experiment. And he found people that are magicians, like I'm working mind matter interaction. That would be someone like me. Yes, I see mind matter interaction. Magicians do a little better at this than the meditators. If you're just meditating, then they weren't seeing quite the same results. So
Wow.
very interesting. And it totally relates to the Mandela effect because if we know that we're asking nature questions and we're getting answers, then we know we're affecting reality and we know we're multidimensional so that we can have a bigger effect than we even thought we could have. We therefore can change anything. And
Yes.
how good can it get when we know this? It
Yeah.
can get very good. So I hope
Yeah.
that touched on that. I know we're wrapping it up, but I'm trying to summarize all this excellent research Dean is
Oh, I
doing. It's too
love
much,
it.
so phenomenal.
I will have a link for that as well. I'll put that in the description. This has been awesome. I cannot thank you enough. I really can't. Is there anything else, any final words that you have?
If you feel at all open to asking how good can it get, just start your day with that. And if you forget to ask it, then notice how that day went compared to a day when you did ask it. Pay attention to those little things. And even if you feel like I don't want to be positive, I'm not that kind of person, I'm just begging you
Yes.
please, for on behalf of all of us, because you're not just affecting yourself. You
Yeah.
have the ability to improve everything for everyone.
Mhm.
You're much greater than you know. And so I'm putting that out there as a possibility for people to start recognizing. I
Yes.
know that's not what we were taught. That was hardly ever mentioned. Nothing like that was mentioned. What if it's true? What if we are much more than we thought?
Yeah.
What if asking that simple a question can change everything?
Everything.
And so I'm just putting that out there. Thank
Yeah.
you in advance to everybody that would even remember it once in a while. You're
Yeah.
doing the world such a good favor. It gives me goosebumps. So thank you with
Yes.
all my heart.